Welcome to the David F. Haas podcast. I'm your host, David F. Haas, in the studio alone today, talking about manifestation. It's become a more recent kind of catchphrase out there. You're hearing it more in the spiritual world. Manifest the life of your dreams. Joe Dispenza talking about manifest, and I do believe that you can manifest whatever life that you want to live. But I do think there's some underlying principles. It's more than just obviously cutting out pictures of the things that you want and putting them onto a vision board. It's more than just chanting mantras. It's more than just connecting to who you're going to be. There's an other element I think that a lot of people miss, and this is the thing that most people don't want to do, which is the difficult work. And when I say difficult work, it's about having the courage to face your emotions, your demons, your shadow, and learning how to let go of whatever it is that you're holding on to. Because without that, all of the mantras and all of that stuff, it all just kind of is like, it's like just, there's just too much information coming from the subconscious. And so that stuff doesn't stick, if that makes sense. So let me give you an example. I've told this story a million times, but I experienced a bunch of shame as a kid around, kind of being the smelly kid is a story I always tell, but there was also shame around the cars that we drove, the house that we live in. Not that we were poor, but there was this element. My dad wasn't great at taking care of his stuff, and so there was a lot of embarrassment around that kind of stuff. And so because of that shame that I experienced as a kid, I developed this persona of like the Dave the entrepreneur, and I had to go out and get. And so that one experience, or multiple experiences I had of shame, led to millions and millions of thoughts throughout the course of my life around making more money. And it was all a protection to make sure I never felt that pain of that shame ever again. And so once I became aware of this, I could say all of the mantras that I wanted to. I am abundant. I am all of these things. I feel like everything is flowing into my life. But the problem is that the subconscious was just constantly pushing this desire, and that desire had me focused. Now looking back, I know had me focused on lack. And so the title of this podcast is "What You Hold in Mind Tends to Manifest." So if you have some sort of emotional trauma, some sort of emotional pain, and the mind's primary function is to keep us safe, and it has developed the tool, for mine, my tool was desire, to protect you from that pain, you can't really hear anything else because the mind is just so active in the protection against that pain. So in order for you to use the power of the mind and positive thought and all of that stuff, we first need to clear space. And I kind of like to think of this as this analogy that I recently created was, if you think of like a hard drive on a computer, so that hard drive has all these programs on it. And if it's full and you want to install a new program, you can't do it. There's no room. And so in order to create more space, you have to delete some of those programs, or format the disk even would be even better. But most of those programs that you took on were like the programs that came with the computer. It was like the operating system, but our programs came from all of our childhood experiences and traumas, and most of them we took on unconsciously. So that's why I say it kind of came with the computer. But now that we become aware, we're like, okay, well, what programs do we actually want and what programs don't we want? And we start to do the work to delete the old programs, right? Which will then create space to bring in techniques such as manifestation and affirmations and connecting to emotions and all of that kind of stuff. But before you do that, you got to delete. So I think that the first step in any manifestation process has to be at looking at the behaviors that are not serving you, right? And then getting to the root of what belief systems have been created around those behaviors, what thoughts are associated with those behaviors, and what that belief system is protecting you from feeling, right? And so let's just say I was tuning into this, like a lot of escape, like addiction, right? So it's way easier to escape our emotions than it is to actually deal with them. So it's actually like addiction, alcohol, drugs, social media, watching Netflix. It's all weak as fuck, right? Because it's the easy road. It's the road of escape. It's the road to not look at the thing that we don't want to look at. So the thing that requires a ton of courage is actually to say, okay, let me stop drinking. Let me stop using the drugs. Let me stop eating the food. Let me stop watching the Netflix, and let's really tune into how it is that I feel when I'm still. And it's going to be not good enough, unworthy, feeling like you're not fulfilling your potential, whatever that may be. And so the behavior that we want to change that's created out of this belief system is escape. So if we choose to no longer escape, then we have to deal with what is underneath that belief system, or what that belief system is protecting us from. So let's just say the pain of failure is one that really keeps people trapped. So if we decide that we are going to begin looking at the pain of failure, we have to connect to those moments in our lives where we failed, right? And then from that failure, you'll be able to see what the mind created to protect you from ever failing again. So if you fail a test, maybe you create and you feel ashamed. Maybe mom and dad yell at you. Maybe the teacher calls you out. I remember I had this teacher. She used to yell out the grades that everybody got as they got their test back, which now looking back, I'm like, that was pretty terrible. But like, if you got like a F, I remember she would slam the paper on your desk and say F, looking right in the face, which I was like, I'm not that old, but it's wild. That was her technique. But I remember the embarrassment that would go along with like getting a poor grade. But even if you had a teacher that didn't do that, you know what happened in school. It's like, everyone says, well, what did you get? What did you get? And so if your grade was lower than the great person next to you, you felt like you were less than, you felt like you weren't good enough. So maybe the mind develops the protection of outworking everybody else. And so the mind's protections work until they don't, right? And so if you are constantly outworking everybody else, eventually you're going to collapse in burnout, let's just say. That could be one of the ways that would manifest in your life. And so in order for us to break these patterns, we have to go back to the pain that we experienced as a kid, reconnect, allow ourselves to feel that shame fully so that the energy of that shame burns out. And then when we are no longer avoiding that shame, we no longer need the protection from the mind. So if you no longer need the protection from the mind, we clear space in the mind to then install these manifestation techniques. So I guess that would be step one if I'm turning this into a 7-step process, or not seven, some sort of amount of step process. The first thing you need to do is you need to clear the space by connecting to the behaviors that are not serving you and understand how those behaviors are protections and understand what they're protecting you from, and then learn how to let those go for good. And I've recorded probably a bunch of letting go podcasts that you could probably go check out. Now that you've created the space, you've deleted some of the old programs, now you want to start installing some new programs. So I think one of the greatest tools that I created, or I probably picked up on it from somebody, but I've kind of put it into my own words, is like, if you want to visualize the life that you want to live, right? Like whatever it is, let's say you want to make $1 million. It's not so much about the material thing that you're after, the money, because the money is really just neutral. So if you want to have $1 million, what you need to ask yourself is, how will you feel once you have $1 million in the bank? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect the goal to the emotion, because the mind worked where we were all stuck was we had a negative emotion. The mind went to work and created millions and millions of thoughts to protect us from that emotion. So we were feeling and then thinking. But now that we've created some space, we can then think to create a feeling, which will create more thinking. So we begin thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. We create this cycle. Whereas before, we just felt and then thought. So the emotions were in control, but now we're using the power of the mind to connect to how we will feel once we get to whatever it is that we want to accomplish. And so once you can connect to that feeling, so let's just say you're going to feel, if you make $1 million, you're going to feel respected. Okay. So, well, what does it feel like to feel respected? Connect to how that feels in the body. And as you begin to connect to that emotion, we want to try and make it as real as possible, right? And this is the stuff that Dispenza is teaching about. He's saying you want to connect to the future that you want to create, and you want to sit in that as long as you possibly can. So the longer you sit in a state of gratitude, for example, the more you will be able to understand and connect to that feeling, the more that feeling of gratitude will create more thoughts of gratitude, which will create more things for you to be grateful for in your life. So this is the cycle that we're trying to create. But in this process, when you ask yourself how you're going to feel, if the answer, for example, is respected, then the next question I would ask is, well, why don't you feel respected now, right? And the answer is not because you don't have $1 million, right? The answer is because somewhere along the lines in your life, you were disrespected, right? And you developed a belief system that if you had $1 million, you would be respected, right? And so we get two things out of this exercise. We get to connect to the emotion that we want to feel, but we also get to uncover something that we think we have to go get out there that already exists in here, right? And that's really the core of all manifestation, is this great understanding that everything that we think we need to go get out there is already available to us in here. So if we want to be respected, the first question we would ask ourselves was, why aren't we respected now? And we start tuning into that, and then we would recognize that we could then begin respecting ourselves. So now that we respect ourselves because we've let go of all the pain that's associated with the feeling of being disrespected, now money begins to flow into our lives because we are already feeling the way we want to feel by achieving the goal. So this is essentially, once you believe it, you can achieve it. But it's a lot easier said than done, right? It's like, this is like one that I've struggled with, and I was tuning into it. It's like my diet's always all over the place. Like I go weeks where I'm really good and weeks where I'm really bad. And it was coming to me today that this is one simple thing. It's like what you hold in mind tends to manifest. So I'm constantly thinking about my eating habits and how they're not good. So I constantly have bad eating habits, right? So then if you look at manifestation, you say, okay, let me just start repeating to myself that I am healthy. Well, you can see how that's not going to work because I don't believe I'm healthy, right? And so I have to get to the root of why I've created a belief that I'm unhealthy, and how that belief is keeping me in these patterns, and then do the work there to begin to believe that I am healthy. Once I believe that I am healthy, I will probably then manifest more healthy habits in my life. So it's not just as easy as connecting to as saying a thought or writing a mantra or repeating a mantra. Will it help? Yeah, sure. But at the core of it, we have to get to the root of these things. So first, we got to let go of the pain. Second, we want to ask ourselves, well, how are we going to feel once we achieve X? Third, we're going to ask, why don't we feel that way now, which will send us again into the letting go process. And then the fourth thing that you can do is you can start using the power of the mind to connect you to a deeper why, right? So there's this exercise out there called 7 Levels Deep, where you basically ask yourself a question, and then the answer to the question is the next question. So for example, say, I want to be, why is it important I want to be a millionaire. Why is it important for you to be a millionaire? Because if I'm a millionaire, I'll feel respected. Why is it important for you to be respected, right? And then you keep going down, all the way down to the level 7. And at level 7, you're going to connect to a stronger why that is beyond the survival pattern of being respected, or beyond, I don't want to say survival pattern, beyond the belief that if you achieve $1 million, you'll be respected. So if we go down this 7 levels deep, we're going to get to a stronger why. Once we get connected to a really powerful why, we will begin that cycle of thinking and then feeling, right? And that will create more of these thoughts. The next step is we want to begin using the power of the mind to tell us how to actually do the thing that we wanted to do. So the mind has been great at telling us all of the things that we can't do in our lives, right? You can't stop eating like shit. You're never going to be healthy. Like the mind will just repeat things over and over and over again. And what we hold in mind tends to manifest. And the mind doesn't discern between negative or positive. Okay. So if you are constantly saying to yourself, I need to eat healthier, right? All of the mind is hearing is that you're not eating healthy, essentially, right? So when you say, I need to eat healthy, you're basically admitting that you're not eating healthy. And so then the mind just continues to bring more not healthy eating into your life. If you believed you were healthy, right, then the mind would start showing you thoughts and things, if you really truly believed it, of more healthy habits. Okay, so we need to be very, very conscious of what our mind is telling us. And one of the things that I was just tuning into is like anything that I say becomes a reality. But it was working in the reverse for me. It was like if I was saying something, and it happened to me last night. I was hosting my group meeting, and I said to myself, I was like, oh, I want to keep this to an hour, right? And because I was holding in mind that I don't want to go over time, I ended up going a half hour over time, right? So what would have been a better manifestation strategy would be I always end my meetings on time, right? A belief that I always end my meetings on time, not I can't go any further than an hour, because what ends up happening is I just go further than an hour. So it's really interesting to like pay attention to how the mind works. And Hawkins used to talk about this. He's like, he got to a point where he said he could just think about like licorice, for example, and then all of a sudden someone would come by his house and drop off a pack of licorice, right? Which sounds wild, but like this is actually, when you really begin to tune in, how much this stuff can manifest, and our own minds actually limit how things come into our lives. Like if you think you want to make $1 million, maybe you have a belief that to make $1 million, you have to start a business and you have to get this many customers. But the universe has all kinds of ways to manifest $1 million. And if you try and control it all, you might actually be closing the doors to how the universe could provide that money to you. So the last step would be to begin using the power of the mind to show you how you could achieve, or you could tune into the thing that you want most. So a great little technique that I've been using a lot lately is to write out in a little journaling practice, like, why am I so successful, right? Or why am I so rich? Or why am I so abundant? Or why am I such a great partner? And just allow the mind to like spew out all of the reasons why you are that thing. And what you'll notice as you do this practice is that all of those things already exist for you right now. There's nothing that you have to go out and get. It's all right there for you. It's just a matter of aligning with this new reality that you were unaware of, because the negative thoughts were clouding you from actually seeing what was actually possible. So with this little manifestation tool of tuning into why it is that you are already this, you will then begin to tune into not only the how, but you'll also begin to tune into the feeling, and you'll also begin to move to the sense of knowing that all of this is already available to you. And then this is how we actually begin to manifest the things that we really want to manifest in our lives. We connect to the emotion of it. We start to see how it's all going to unfold, and we connect to the emotion. We begin to like have this sense of knowing that is already ours. And once we move into this place of knowing, that's when the thing that you want to manifest flows into your life. And it actually flows into your life effortlessly. There is no hustle. There is no grind. Doesn't mean you're not doing things. You're not just laying on the couch, but it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like a nice, flowing, effortless journey, you know? And so it's like, I remember when I decided to turn on my one-on-one coaching again, it's like, I just set the intention to turn my one-on-one coaching, and within 2 days, a client showed up, right? And so like, this is the actual power. And it's actually been recently that Zach and I here have been trying to control bringing new clients into my program, that we've been facing some resistance, right? And so I was like, no, we just got to get back to like just serving, right? And just speaking to the people that are already our audience, and then the clients will just show up, right? And the more we try and control, the more we actually push away the infinite power of the universe or of God. So let me do a little recap, because I was kind of bouncing all over the place here on this thing. The first thing is we got to tune into what beliefs and behaviors are limiting us, and what emotion we are protecting ourselves from feeling. The second thing we need to begin to do after we've created the space on our hard drive is we need to get connected to the why we want to achieve the thing that we want to achieve. How will we feel once we get to that place? And then we can ask our question from there is, well, why don't we feel that way now? That will also connect you to probably some other emotional pain that needs to be dealt with. And then the third thing is start using the mind to show you everything that you already know, to show you that you actually, all of this is already available to you. And you can begin to do that through the question of, why am I so successful, healthy, whatever it may be. And then the last thing is moving into this place of like real belief, right? Real belief. And I guess what you could call that would be like surrender. It's like a surrender to the process. So to me, the definition of surrender is a complete and unwavering faith that you will be supported, that the universe has your back. There's nothing that you need to control. There's nothing that you need to do. You just need to align yourself with who it is that you want to become, right? And then allow yourself to be pulled by that intention and have complete and utter faith that you're going to be okay. This is way easier said than done. And it's like, I still struggle with this. One of the things I haven't surrendered over completely is like the whole business portion of what I do. Like the Lungo Vita, I haven't surrendered that completely over. There's moments of surrender for sure, but I'm still holding on to the control of how it's going to all unfold. And because of that control, I'm probably limiting myself in all kinds of ways. So a surrender is a complete and unwavering faith that you're going to be okay and everything's going to work out exactly how it's supposed to. And it takes some time to get there. But this is essentially the process of manifestation. And I think the big takeaway I want you to kind of like just put a pin in from this podcast is that what you hold in mind tends to manifest. So we need to start observing what is going through our mind most. And as we begin to create that awareness is the catalyst for change or for shift. But if we don't have that awareness, we will continue to manifest the things that we don't want, because that is what is most on our mind. If we're constantly worried about money and we're constantly connected to that we don't have enough money and we can't afford that and we can't afford to go on vacation and whatever it may be, or how expensive things are, then we are going to continue to see that throughout the course of our lives. But if we believe that we are abundant and we believe that we're going to be okay no matter what, then we will begin to manifest all kinds of wealth that we probably never even believe was possible for ourselves. So this is the process, and I think this is the takeaway, is like we need to first understand what's happening in our minds, because if we can make that shift and we can start getting our minds to tell us all of the things that we want to feel, then that thing is going to come into our life, and it's probably going to come into our life effortlessly. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If you got any value whatsoever from the podcast, just click that subscribe button, and we'll see you again next Sunday.